Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, September 16th. We're on the Americas account. Normally we would be on, I suppose, the Asian account, trying to do another daily quest, well not a weekly tavern brawl, but we already did that on Friday, and we've got other things to do, I'm sure. So what do I want to re-roll? Do I want to struggle with a mage and shaman, which would be a little bit difficult, or struggle with two druid games, which would probably be a lot more difficult? So let's re-roll that. Alright, so rogue, class cards, beasts, and mage and shaman. I only need to get 2 daily quests done, but honestly it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to get more done today. Tomorrow I suspect heavily around noon, if I'm awake around noon, which is a big if. My insomnia has shifted my sleep schedule to something that is kind of consistent now. Like we're doing early morning or early afternoon streams. I could have certainly started at like 6 a.m. if I wanted to and stream Hearthstone. I don't think I really want to do that. I've also managed to actually accomplish quite a bit over the weekend. A lot of gameplay, no distractions, no messing with my Linux server, nothing boring or geeky like that. I played the game Echo. Echo is extremely pretty, and it's an interesting comparison for sure to Control. In fact, by playing Control and Echo, I started a bit of a series of games that are one-word titles that also are super simplistic words. So, yeah, there's something that I'm going to continue with that. So I played all of Echo. Echo is very pretty, and it's a great contrast to Control because it has a lot of the reflections and the shadows and a lot of the stuff that is enabled in ray tracing, and it looks nearly as good without any ray tracing at all, because that definitely didn't exist when Echo came out. And Echo is made by a company that, last I heard, sold the movie rights to it and then went out of business and went bankrupt. Although the game does seem to be available for purchase on Steam, so I don't know if that actually ever happened or if this was more of a case of they just laid off all of their employees and the person in charge still technically isn't in charge.
Blood and plunder.
What's interesting, I would say, about Echo in particular is the gameplay is awful. It is hugely frustrating. It's, according to how long to beat, 6 hours. It took me probably 8 hours to beat it. The concept of the gameplay is interesting. It's a 3D third-person perspective shooter strategy kind of stealth game, but honestly I could never grasp a real feel that you could play it as stealth. Every action, well, not every action, honestly, about 6 actions that you can do, whether it's opening a door, sliding, jumping over a ledge, shooting somebody, eating berries, playing a harp or a piano, picking up a glass orb, putting it down, picking it up off the floor, walking on water. I'm basically naming everything there. That's kind of all the actions. If you do any of those actions, the world that you're in, which is kind of like a giant VR environment that is also running some kind of corrupted, weird security system, learns from your actions and teaches it to a bunch of echoes of you or clones of you that will then start copying your actions. And what happens is, at pre-programmed points, it seemed very inconsistent, not really based on any kind of time, which frankly, if it had been based on a timer and they had just said, oh, okay, let's put a timer on your HUD and show that every minute or two the system resets, that would have been a lot more helpful.
Justice is mine.
So, yeah, if you don't do anything in one cycle, so if you stop shooting people, then the clones will stop remembering how to shoot. The power goes out, and when the power goes out and the lights go out, you can do whatever you want. So half of the game is frankly, oh, the lights are out, the power's out, good, I'm gonna shoot everybody around me and then run and make a mad dash towards the exit, which is most of the entire gameplay mechanic in a nutshell, is running towards the exit. There's really not anything else I can say about that. It's just like, that is what you do most of the time. It tries to tell a story, and honestly, it felt so pretty and so well animated. Like, Echo may have been trying to make a 90-minute like direct-to-DVD animated movie, but the story kind of falls apart at the end. There's a distinct point where you spend the entire game talking to this old computer ship that you're talking to. It's AI, and then it seems like it's a kind AI computer ship that being an AI shouldn't be emotional, and then all of a sudden it becomes super emotional and angry at her, at the main character you're playing as, who's named In. They say her name like twice. It is also worth mentioning, Echo is so poorly set up that it doesn't even install the DirectX files it needs to install, and it renamed the installer, so it's not a default installer. So like, you go through I went through like a 5-minute experience of cutscenes setting up the whole story and everything, and then as the game tries to load into the game, it just locks up and crashes, and I had to go look in the discussion board and say, why is this happening? This is crazy. The main story is you're playing as In, you're trying to work through a giant planet machine that might be a heaven that you had been raised to believe in, and so like you don't really know if this machine is taking your thoughts and memories and depicting it as a heaven, or whether this is or whether this heaven actually did exist. It's set far, far in the future. There's a lot of opportunity for a lot more backstory. The game is not a horror game at all, but it probably should have been. As you go deeper, the heaven then becomes more like a hell, and it kind of flips back and forth, so you really don't know. And you're doing all of this, you're going through this long passage of walking from point A to point B while not getting murdered by clones of yourself, to bring back to life a person that you really only knew for 5 minutes, and we don't hear any dialogue from him or anything like that, so he's just talked about. He's not actually a character that the player would care about. Yeah, Echo, very, very pretty, but I would say your best bet is to just go on YouTube and look at all the cutscenes. I hate to say don't even watch my own content, but
How much is this
honestly,
worth to you?
if you value your time even slightly, you probably are better off just looking at all the cutscenes on YouTube. There's nothing to be gained from trying to play the game. There was an unlockable gameplay mode and an unlockable difficulty. I thought maybe it was going to unlock like a hardcore mode that would make it really easy, really difficult as its new difficulty, and then I thought maybe it would unlock a peaceful mode as a different gameplay mode. Of course, peaceful would probably then, I guess, disable all of the difficulty settings. Not true, though. Actually, it just unlocked a very hard mode and what they called legacy mode, which meant that the echoes remembered your actions for 2 cycles, not 1, making the game more complicated than it needed to be. It was already too complicated. It's such an awkward, unfamiliar way to have a game exist. Like, I just don't see how you would want to try to play a 3D third-person shooter strategy game, and even if you did want to play that, I don't know how you'd wrap your head around it. I certainly never did. If Echo had been more like XCOM, maybe I would get it then if it was a top-down turn-based thing, but it wasn't. It's all real time, and all it really boils down to is enemies will chase after you, and they run slightly faster than you, so they catch up. So all you have to do then is, all you can do in most situations is just continue to run away. If you try to shoot them, okay, you can do that, but then the enemies know how to shoot a gun, and if they know how to shoot a gun, then they will use that against you in the next cycle. So yeah, that's not helpful.
Justice is mine.
Yeah, and then Echo doesn't really end on much of a revelation of the story. As we got to the end, and as I'm banging my head against the levels, playing on easy, by the way, like I'm playing on the easiest of easy settings, and I'm still dying all the time and getting rather frustrated between every single puzzle. There really was just a lack of interest or focus in making the gameplay really work. Honestly, if they had just made it a walking simulator and made it really pretty, I think that would have worked a lot better. They had a decent amount of conversation going on, so that would have worked. Like, there definitely would have been a case where you could have kept on.
This guy's toast.
Just had a walking simulator to tell a story. That's really all it needed.
Justice is mine.
Okay.
This guy's toast.
So yeah, the story of Echo, I think, is started off as a slightly interesting, kind of dangerous conversation they have in video games, because let's face it, video games have not been smart about making deep philosophical arguments. So the computer AI that runs the ship was making for most of the game was making a very agnostic atheist argument. Agnostic meaning I don't believe it can ever be truly known. Maybe the AI ship was making a Gnostic atheist perspective, saying that it could be known that there is no God. Whereas in the character you're playing in is making very much a Gnostic theist argument saying, yes, we know there's a God, although God is not really mentioned as much as just this. I don't know how you better describe it other than a giant planet world that's like a heaven that probably was created by super rich people in the future to look like heaven based on a lot of things. There's a ton of opulence, and that's part of the problem of Echo in particular, is there's just so much gold and so much texture and so many reflections and so many things that you can look at, so many vases and tables and chairs, that it doesn't help the performance of the game running at all. There's just too many models. Not as bad as Control though. I feel like Control still kind of wins the prize on really high number of models that I think in particular were unnecessary. Let's see. Go and kill this. And then in the turn. So In had run away from her grandfather, and she's a resourceful. The grandfather's not really a grandfather. He's a, like, I think not super rich person, but a rich person enough that he could genetically engineer hundreds of resourcefuls and then put them through trials that seem eerily similar to the trials you're going through. And so he was apparently genetically engineering them and brainwashing them so that they would, some of the resourcefuls at least, would be able to make it to this heaven thing. And then at the end, there's a revelation that he was extracting their souls and putting them in little cubes, and allegedly their bodies were coming in through a different door. It said the soul and the body shall come in through different doors. I never really saw any evidence that the bodies ever actually did make it, and instead it felt like this giant plant machine was just cloning people and creating them, if it was even doing that. It's questionable what the planet machine was really supposed to do or would do if it was functioning properly. It's pretty directly said that it isn't, and so it's glitching out in part. So it almost feels like it's trying to tell a story almost like the Odyssey, where you're going through a lot of struggles and an epic quest to bring back this person, and going, or perhaps a Dante's Inferno, while forgetting the part that makes Dante's Inferno interesting is that there was a bunch of other people and a bunch of dialogue there to explain what's going on and show different parts and have different conversations. You really don't have any of that in Echo. So yeah, a theist versus atheist argument is a very dangerous argument to make. Honestly, for Echo, I don't think you can side with that with the computer AI much, because you kind of know in a video game setting that the character you're playing as is going to be proven right. Even if the character was proven wrong, there's this problem of the fact that you're seeing it with your own eyes. So if you are going to doubt your own perception, you have to do it by doubting your own sanity, or doubting the narrator, which would be the main character you're playing as, and what they're saying. The only way the story would have ended as you are seeing a place that looks a lot like a heaven is that either a religion was formed based off some computer AI things, but the promise that the cubes could bring people back to life wasn't true, or you buy into this whole thing might be is true. Although even Echo doesn't really go hard down that path. It doesn't really make the argument that this planet is actually heaven and it's just being presented as a giant planet machine. So they went soft on that argument also because they didn't want to get, I guess, reviewed badly. So I went from Echo, which was a very pretty game, but then overall a terrible gameplay mechanic, to playing Cradle. It is also worth mentioning that I compared Echo a little bit to Contrast because the main female character looks a little bit like the main character from Contrast. And I kind of wonder if perhaps Echo was a game that was in development as part of another game, and the contract fell through. That might explain it. My suspicion, though, is Echo was supposed to be a much bigger game with a lot more, and they locked into this kind of AI learning concept, and that they fell in love with, and it's probably a great example of kill your babies needing to be implemented when working on a project. This is not a little recommendation, of course, but a lot of times if an idea becomes very dear to you, you know you're on the wrong path, or you have a high chance of being on the wrong path. So had they early in development said, actually the gameplay testing here we're doing, which I'm not sure they really were testing their own gameplay, otherwise they would have gotten feedback for certain saying, actually this is boring, this is annoying, I'm getting caught because of a bunch of BS things, this feels like hide and go seek instead of feeling like a game. Most games, what do? You shoot something and then it's no longer in your way. You don't usually have to run from something at risk of your life. Also, the game does not checkpoint you much, and you have to kind of manually checkpoint by walking through save arches that are rarely placed throughout the levels. So it's a big frustration. Also, all the boss fights are just collecting a bunch of keys. You have to get a certain number of keys, but not all the keys that are coming in the form of glowing orbs. But once you have those glowing orbs, it unlocks an elevator down to the next area. There really isn't a boss so much in the game at all. Like, no final boss fight, really. Just slightly more difficult to kill enemies in the last section.
What you want?
So, yeah, I covered Echo in contrast to Control. I mentioned Contrast. And then I went to Cradle, which is a weird game, certainly. It seems like it's a Russian game. It's set in Mongolia, but then there's only really two characters that you see, and both of them are robots in a distant future. Humans in android bodies, to be exact. So I don't know if maybe there was some weird last-minute Kremlin demanded censorship to not show Mongolians. I don't know too much about how Mongolians are treated, but they're probably not treated particularly great. They are kind of like Native Americans, I would imagine, in the United States, where we aren't actively trying to kill them all, but we're certainly not treating them very well, and we certainly didn't treat them very well in the past. Let's see. can I do all of this? No. So I want to do this, but I can't. I have an elemental. Which one's an elemental? Him? Alright. That worked. Cradle starts off at Cradle's story. I'll try and cover it, but honestly, best I can tell is it's a surreal thing. My first experience with Cradle is I had to unplug my controller because it had no dead zoning at all for a Windows controller, which is something that, had you just programmed controller support correctly, would have been handled by Windows perfectly fine. So the camera on the right stick was just going down, 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 down. So I had to unplug my controller. The sensitivity on the mouse is not great, even on top of that. So it's still not really having the best of experiences. And then the mouse and keyboard buttons are fine with WASD, but then the game does seem to have some lagging issues. I had to turn the anti-aliasing down from, I believe, 8x down to 2x, and at that point I wasn't willing to go any further lower. I think what's weird is the game started for me at least with the music all the way down to 0, the graphics down at the lowest setting, and let's see what else. The resolution was low too. Alright, I hate to do this, but I think I'm gonna have to run just briefly to the bathroom after this recording, so it'll just take just a minute. So I'll be back in about 2 minutes. So, alright, sorry. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So, yeah, Cradle starts, you're in this Mongolian yurt, and let's see, do I really want to play Beast? I guess I can play a couple hundred games. We're going through this fast. Although Mech Hunter is probably not the hunter I need. I don't know what else I could play that would have beasts on it. Cradle starts off, you're in this Mongolian yurt. There's a ton of what looks like Unreal 3D models that have been pre-bought or made. I think a lot of them probably were custom models, or at least custom textures on custom models, because you had a lot of Mongolian looking rugs and then some unique looking androids and electronic stuff, so some of it certainly would have been yeah, I don't think I have a single beast in this deck, so I might be out of luck and it might just be smarter to move to the next thing.
Why do you call?
Like, Murlocs are labeled as Murlocs. Everything else wouldn't really have any beasts in it. So there's a ton of models and a ton of text things. When you click on a text thing, it puts the text in a small screen in the lower right corner instead of in the middle, and the text size is too small for my eyes, at least from 10 feet away on the oh, I think it's probably a 60-inch screen would be my guess. Yeah, that would be my guess. So you'd be better off if you were to play Cradle playing it in a lower resolution just so the text was bigger. Not that I'm recommending you play Cradle. It looks very pretty and it's very screenshotable. You see this robot android lady, you talk to her throughout the entirety of the game. She is the main character that you interact with, and so you spend a significant amount of time standing in front of that one screenshot and talking to her. When you're not talking to her and you start the game with some incredibly frustrating hidden object stuff. You have to walk around the yard and find things in a 3D hidden object environment, which I've said many times I'd be very interested in seeing an effort in making a game that was a 3D hidden object experience. Now that I've seen that, I am no longer interested in seeing that because it really turned out terrible and did not work well at all. They did do my suggestion in part where they reset where all the items are. The worst part of the hidden object stuff happens in the middle of the game where you have to literally crouch down to pick up a TV remote that you would almost certainly never find without using a walkthrough. And that is the only time in the entire game that you need to know that the crouch button even exists or use it. When you're not doing hidden object games, you're doing these VR cube puzzle games that are terrible, or you're doing some pretty bad platforming in a few places. There's a point where you have to go outside a couple times and find things. Basically, you're following rocks that are marked to point you in other ways. So, yeah, there's definitely a frustrating amount of experience that happens in all of that. And so you really, in Cradle, never get any good gameplay. The story itself, in fairness, is kind of intriguing. Until you get to the extremely abrupt ending that doesn't really fix anything or solve or resolve anything. It seems like the game was trying to sell its soundtrack more than anything, so there's definitely some decisions about making you be in a really large empty area where you have to walk from point A to point B a lot so that they can just spin up another song on the soundtrack, and then they end the credits on what is effectively a music video, trying to wrap up the story through the music video. I've read several posts on the Steam forums trying to explain everything, and it's really rough. It's barely explained. It starts just kind of saying that there's this virus in the future that stops people from being able to have kids. Fair enough. Because of that virus, people then get put in android bodies. Not fully explained why that's a solution in any way to that virus. But at a certain point, you get into a deeper part of the story, and they talk about some people having telepathy. They talk about, and see, maybe a lot of this is just because it's translated from Russian very poorly, but in English, they have people that have telepathy, and at the very end, they strongly suggest that time travel is a thing too. So you're going in far too many different directions for a sci-fi story. The robot bodies create some kind of chemical when people have emotions, but a lot of people are not having emotions anymore, so the chemical becomes valuable. Anything that is pretty is quantified apparently and sold as valuable there. It's just like a bunch of weird things that I don't think really translates, and so the whole game almost feels like it's a dream. Yeah, I don't know what we can do here, so let's get rid of Custom Hunter and make a new deck just full of beasts, because this is going to be a problem that happens a lot. So Classic Hunter, 30 or 30 cards. I think we could probably do better than that. If we're just trying to play beasts, we can cram it full of beasts. Beast, 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 beast. There's a beast. Beast and beast. Okay. Meanwhile, we can just start throwing in more beasts that we're interested in. I think one more beast is all I need. There we go. That should be more than enough. Let's go ahead and change the name too, so we actually know what it is. It's a very rare occasion when I say a game should be a walking simulator instead of actually having any gameplay elements, but I really feel like Cradle should have been a walking simulator. It seems to almost take the ideas of a point-and-click adventure and do the absolute worst part of it. In the middle of Cradle, they literally have you scanning flowers and picking flowers, which took, I swear, at least 45 minutes, because the flowers had to have a certain beauty number associated with it, and the number was extremely high. Like twice in an extremely, again, like a 6-hour game, twice I had to say, let's I'll do this off screen, because it was just so much grinding. And I would say at least a dozen times I said, let me just look at the walkthrough, because this isn't worth the effort. The story is left extremely nebulous and awkward and oddly ended. It feels like they probably ran out of a budget. And honestly, I would say the Echo has slightly better story than Cradle does, but both of them have pretty bad stories. But worse than Control, and I wouldn't particularly even say Control has a good story. Although, in all fairness to Control, they had a way more budget, and so there's a bunch more side missions I just didn't do in Control, compared to I did basically everything that's worth doing in Echo and Cradle. Although that being said, I didn't unlock any of the unlockables in Echo, and Cradle doesn't have any unlockables, as far as I could tell. So my next movement is going to be playing Valley, I think, because each one of these, both Echo and Cradle, have barely made 6 episodes each, so that gives me about 12. Maybe I could squeeze that into all of December, just those 2. I guess I should take a little bit of a break and do the Lego game. That was my next move. But yeah, play Lego City first, I guess, and then maybe do a little bit of scheduling and figure out where we're actually going to line up before I start playing Valley. But Valley is kind of my next game. I'm burning through a lot of indie games and it kind of getting beaten into submission into learning the lesson of like, oh, you know why these indie games never sold and never got any coverage? Sometimes it isn't just because nobody was interested in them. Sometimes it's also people were interested in them and then they played the games and found them to be downright awful. Yeah, Echo in particular looked amazingly good. It looked like it was going to be a maybe 1 step or 2 step below Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice, but it isn't because of the gameplay mechanic and the frustration there. Cradle looked like a step up, several steps up from doing a Big Fish game, hidden object adventure, or an old LucasArts adventure style game, but its frustrating gameplay mechanics also run into that problem where they are not they're not good enough. They're just not worth playing. So 2 games in a row that I say aren't really worth playing. Control kind of is worth playing. Probably get it when it's cheap once all the DLC is out. I find it kind of ridiculous, and I don't know if I mentioned that they announced those 4 pieces of DLC, but at no point did they announce any kind of balance changes to make the game less difficult or change the difficulty setting, which would be weird to this late in the game introduce a difficulty setting, but it does seem like that's really what it needs more than anything. I definitely have seen other people playing Control and dying quite a bit. Not as much as I died in Echo though. Man. And twice now, I intended for both of those series to be 30-minute episodes, and I just trying to play the game in the very first 30 minutes I played both Echo and Cradle. I'm like, oh, I have accomplished absolutely nothing. There is no way I can justify this or justify ending the recording 30 minutes in. I've never been really a fan of doing 30-minute episodes, but I constantly kind of need to get back to it just so I have more footage that lasts. Alright, so we have a decent amount of news. Apparently I was wrong if I said Tokyo Game Show was done last Friday, or if I had even said that earlier. Yeah, Tokyo Game Show may be done now, but it was definitely going in a much full force effort as far as the weekend. So we've got a lot of announcements from the Tokyo Game Show and a lot of just games that came out on Steam. Let's see. Yeah, even 32 minutes ago, TechRaptor has a new Tokyo Game Show thing. One of the stories I don't really have anything to mention too much about is booth babes are still definitely a thing, and I guess as baby as ever, if that's a phrase. So that's still going strong in Tokyo Game Show, and I don't know. Does it get more attention to your games? Maybe, maybe not. Is it giving good employment, particularly the Japanese cosplayers and models? Probably. Like, I want a lot of the booth babes that were put out of a job from E3 came out directly and said, actually no, I do this for every kind of convention. This is my year-round job, and you just lost me work and made my life worse without really helping anything. And I knew what I was getting into and what I was doing. I think in Las Vegas in particular, or those E3 I think happens in California. Las Vegas in particular, you have showgirls that know exactly what they're getting into and what they're doing and getting paid very well, whereas they would have fewer opportunities for other forms of employment, particularly in Vegas. Alright, time to move over to the European account. This may be a particularly short experience. So yeah, and I think the same could be said in Japan. It's like, yeah, there's a little bit of
the tavern's always
I don't want to say objectification, because that's really not the case, particularly in Japan. It's not like booth babes are treated like objects. It is that they are being revered for their beautiful female form, and being picked as the best canvas to have a small logo that says Capcom or something on it, on their costume. If anything, it's female form worship in a sense, or beauty worship. And there's certainly nothing wrong with being beautiful if you are. It's fleeting, to say the least, but you shouldn't feel bad about it. Really shouldn't feel bad if you're ugly either. 3 tavern brawls? Thanks. Alright, well that gives me more of the things to do. Then we'll stick with Druid Tavern Brawl, and I guess we'll have some Tavern Brawls to show off anyways. But this is going to be a difficult win, almost certainly, unless I get really, really lucky. Yeah, there's a not fully formed thought in my head, but you really wouldn't say the Mona Lisa is objectifying the model for the Mona Lisa. She was assumedly paid to be a model, to be painted, and assumedly more than happy to be a subject of the painting, and assumedly more than happy with the results. So, yeah, I don't know how that whole argument boils down. It never really has made any sense at all. Because if I start to think about objectification, I'm thinking more like hardcore S&M play where you're forcing someone to be your chair. You kick them to the ground and say, be my chair, and then you sit on them. And if they're willing and consenting to that's still perfectly fine. But that's where I would say objectification really starts, is when you're actually treating them like an object instead of just the desirable thing that the human condition has said is desirable. Physical appearance has been desirable for in some form or fashion for the entirety, as far as I know, of mankind. And it certainly happens in both genders. There's not a ton of booth, I don't know, what would you call them, booth bobs or booth guys, booth hunks, I guess would be a fair title. You don't get a lot of that, and sure, that's true. But I would say a lot of the cosplaying events do better about including male cosplayers than a lot of other events. The NFL still has yet to have a male cheerleader, I believe, unless that's changed. Right. Mana crystal. Can't really do anything. So let's go ahead and play this. And
Time waits for no one.
let's see. Do this. And then in the turn, I guess.
For the wild.
But yeah, that's still a thing. And I guess Tokyo Game Show is, at least for Japan, still being a very successful presentation. Whereas I would argue that the PAX that just happened, which is PAX West, which I think used to be PAX Prime, didn't really succeed to announce any new interesting games, and I don't think PAX really ever has. I think it, in part, maybe was given a unfair challenge or burden at the beginning for that to ever even happen, but it has now expanded into this mentality and this thought, in my head at least, that PAX Prime, PAX West should have at least 5 AAA games that are exclusive to it coming out and getting announced, and that's really not happening. So then it makes it feel like PAX Prime is not that interesting. Gamescom, kind of similar. I think Gamescom did get 2 or 3 games worth of mentioning. And in all fairness, Tokyo Game Show, I'm not sure they have really anything new, because the way Japanese trickle out information, you know it's coming 4 years before it's even been announced, and they trickle out, oh yeah, we're gonna have an announcement for an announcement for an announcement for an announcement. I've got to do something here.
I see lunch now. Dinner.
Okay, so we've got a game on Steam called Whacktory, or I guess this is supposed to be Factory. There was another game that was similar to this but uglier looking, and I kind of dismissed it as an uninteresting game under the fact that it was visually boring, even though I'd heard like mainstream people talking about it. This looks like it might be a VR game. Yeah, it's free to play, local co-op required. Interesting. So kind of heavy burdens there, with the exception of not having to pay anything. Yeah, This doesn't really need to go on my follow list though. It does fall right in that category of why would I want to play a game that is somebody's job.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Let's just play this.
For the wild.
Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Good Old Games Galaxy 2.0 details 4 new features and crazy levels of customization. Good Old Games Galaxy is supposed to be this central place that integrates where all your games are. So it's the one ring to rule them all idea, where it would be able to scan your Steam directory and your Epic Games Store directory and put it all in one place, and then have you, I assume, in the Good Old Games login place to communicate with all your friends and matchmake with all of your friends. The problem that I think falls with Good Old Games is it's CD Projekt Red that owns them, so it's a publisher that published one of the most successful games a couple years ago. So I don't know if every other publisher wants to give their money to CD Projekt Red, although they seem to be not too bothered about that idea of helping a competition as far as the Epic Games Store goes, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the fact that the Unreal Engine really is a needed element. I don't think you get away from the Unreal Engine, even if you wanted to. Not until somebody makes some other kind of engine. Whereas CD Projekt Red did not put out whatever their engine was for The Witcher 3 if it wasn't Unreal itself. The other problem is, while Good Old Games sells itself on being DRM free, which is a problem for a lot of third-party publishers too, and that inherently means some games won't be on Good Old Games. Good Old Games seems to be in part also focused on older games, at least it was originally, and they also curate their storefront, so there is definitely a collection of games that they've come out and said, don't even bother applying, we're not going to allow it on our storefront.
Power takes many forms.
I see your weakness.
Yeah, I've lost. No surprise there. Alright, so TechRaptor's article goes the 4 new features. Global search. It's you can find friends and games just what you might expect. That's weird, certainly. Though I wouldn't want to go into one search box and type in a friend's name and then have it pull up games instead, or pull up a search for a game and have it pull up friends on my friends list names, friends list instead. Those feel like they should be different searches. It also feels like you should definitely have a you should definitely have a search box for the storefront versus the library part. The next feature is manual game adding, which you can do this in Steam anyways, but so I don't know what that really changes. A downloads view is in Steam, so
Malfurion versus Jaina.
so nothing there. And grid and list views are coming to Steam Library with the next update. So it doesn't feel like, as much as TechRaptor is trying to make this feel like it's something, it doesn't seem like they're really offering anything new. And I'm not sure that there really is anything new that needs to to be offered, frankly. Don't fix what isn't broken in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, the Steam app is as good as it needs to be, with a few little tweaks here and there, a lot of which are just background website tweaks that need to happen with discoverability. There is a point I can make, because I have like over 1,000 games, of where, yeah, it would be nicer if I could be better at organizing things, but that's kind of that's it. Like, if there was a better way to automatically organize games and not ruin my current organization in my library, that'd be helpful. If I could get more kinds of tags or user tags on games easier, that might be helpful. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You could try and push me into playing some of the games I haven't played yet, but I kind of have my own schedule around that anyway, so it'd just be frustrating eventually. Yeah, I don't know what else I really want from Steam. Maybe there's things I kind of want him to get rid of, like get rid of the trading cards idea, get rid of the achievements idea, say they've played their part, they don't need to exist anymore. But you kind of can never have that actually happen. So yeah, you just have to kind of live with it. So moving on with the news, Gamma Sutra has an article. Discord cuts games from its paid service plan after Nitro Games fails to take off. Discord's monthly Nitro service is removing free game offerings from its list of perks, a decision the company says is made because the games offered simply weren't being played. It's a call made only a few years after only a few years of running Nitro Games. Alright, so in all honesty, who even remembers that Discord was selling games? I had totally forgotten about it. In the back of my mind, I thought, oh yeah, the Discord was doing that in the same way that I know Apple Arcade is going to be doing that, but it's not really any competition. All the games were these weird indie, if they were exclusive, nobody cared that they were exclusive type games. I've never heard anybody have any kind of frustration or backlash about any of the exclusives on Discord. It seems like they're still running their Nitro service, but frankly they should probably just throw in the towel now. I guess I have to play this.
For the wild.
Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, TechRaptor's 10 Best Games of PAX West 2019. So this might be where I eat my words, if they can actually point out 10 games that interest me. So there's a game here called Cyber Shadow that looks like an NES Contra game. Probably not going to grab my attention until it is really, really well reviewed. Next we have a game called Disintegration. It's a first-person shooter that values accuracy, twitchy play, but the strategy is just as important, according to the description. This game, Haven. I had already heard about Haven. This might be good, this might not be a co-op kind of Journey clone. Let's see. Choose a minion, summon 4 bees to attack them. You know, I probably could have done this and then summoned 4 bees to attack him, but it didn't matter. Haven, again, needs some reviews to figure out what it is. Because this really is a game like Echo and Cradle in a lot of ways, where it looks pretty, but I don't know anything about it. Next we have Indivisible, which I believe is a fighting game of some sort, or an RPG of some sort. It's a JRPG sort. Okay, interesting. Kunai, I've seen a little bit about that. Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection, I imagine that'll sell as well as any of the other Mega Man games. In One RV Anna is kind of like a visual novel game that is getting overhyped because it's being made, I bet, by a person who isn't Japanese, whereas if you were if this were a example of a game that if it was a game made by a Japanese company, it almost certainly would get no coverage, which, yeah, keeps on happening. Do I want to play one more? Yeah, we might as well. And I'll leave it up to you whether you think this is a too close to anime aesthetic or not. It's a spiritual successor, if not a direct successor, to Valhalla, which was also a game that I felt like was hyped and not that interesting. Shovel Knight Dig, I believe, is a mobile game. Spiritfarer is an interesting, maybe like point and click game, I think. Trials of Mana, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Trials of Mana is well received. It probably will be. So I'm fairly certain I had seen all of these games or heard about all of these games before PAX West happened. So kind of what's the point of PAX West? Maybe Cyber Shadow was new to me. And 5 damage to a minion. And there we go. Take that victory. So yeah, I don't think I'm eating my words too much there. PAX West still does feel like it doesn't have too much to show. Alright. And keep on playing. Next we have a game on Steam called Critter Kart, which is clearly an asset flip, low polygon racer game. Or at the very least, it's a low polygon racing game. Maybe it's not an asset flip. It runs both in VR or regular. It's $4.99. It's English only. It just doesn't have enough visual polish to catch my interest, unfortunately. Let's see. It is exactly 100 days, by the way, before Christmas. So, I don't know. I'm not going to try and get cheesy or anything here, but it's going to be a rough Christmas for me. I am fairly certain. I don't think I'm buying any games in the November, December, or October sales from Steam. I don't think I'm buying much of anything for the rest of the year after having to buy a new video card. So if anybody really wants to support my channel, this would be the season to do it. And yeah, gifting now before you personally start needing to spend things on for Christmas gifts works just as well for me. I don't think that there's a huge of
What shall we hunt?
AAA games that are going to come out that I would be gifted. I don't even know how many AAA games really are left for the rest of this year. It might be a shockingly low number that I'm interested in. Code Vein might be the most interesting AAA game for the rest of this year. Because, of course, Borderlands 3 is out now, and I'm boycotting 2K because they did false DMCAs. It seems, from more I hear from different people, the Borderlands 3 is just more Borderlands. If you want more Borderlands, that's perfectly, then you'll be perfectly happy. If you didn't want more Borderlands and you wanted something different, I don't know why in the world you would have expected you were going to not get more Borderlands. Borderlands 2 in a lot of ways is just more Borderlands also, except for, I think, there is kind of this consistent theme that Borderlands 3 is lacking a Handsome Jack-like character, and the story writing is just not quite as good, or that society has just moved on, so that bro-ish, stupid humor, psycho humor that existed in Borderlands 1 and 2 now feels old and dated. Yeah, and that's fine, because the only other way, and this was maybe my fear a little bit, was that Borderlands 3 would just go super woke, and if it tried to do that, the game would have felt incredibly awkward in its dialogue and story, whereas instead it only feels like it's just kind of dumb with unfunny jokes, or at least that's what a lot of people are saying. It'll be interesting to see how Borderlands lines up when it comes out for Steam, and if there's any kind of like extra microtransactions over skins, which would be a big controversy. But you know, at this point, you could you have games like Sea of Thieves adding microtransactions like a year or two later, and so any game could potentially get updated and have a bunch of microtransactions added to them, and we need to have a consistent outcry of that every time that happens.
Free your mind from its bonds.
Let's see, deal 2 damage to a minion, and then deal 2 damage to that minion again.
37.
Then restore health to that guy, and then hit that, I guess. Then end the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Warships of Halloween Night, so they're trying to get in early for low effort Halloween games, and they made a shoot 'em up, which you don't see a ton of Halloween shoot 'em ups, but this does look like garbage. 40% off for 59 cents, English only, 26 achievements. Not making it to the fall list, obviously.
Free your mind from its bonds.
So let's see how this works. Give me a choose one. I don't have a choose one. Alright.
Engaging TC-130 mental dislocator. Got one.
How I have 2 legendary cards, I have no idea. But whatever.
Beetleberries, my favorite.
Lowest minion from my hand, if I play this, and then that would be a 7.
Reporting for duty.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hoverboard, which looks like it's a VR game trying to be a hoverboard game. Almost certainly guaranteed to make you motion sick. Why a hoverboard though? Like, honestly, you could just make a skateboarding game if you do it well, and then put a skin on a skateboarding game and make it a hoverboard game. You're really not getting much of a difference unless the hoverboard is going to fly over large gaps of air, which then doesn't make it much of a skating game where you can grind on ledges or roll down hills, or unless it's gonna go over water, as Back to the Future mentioned that it had to be powered to go over water. That might explain some of this. There's just 10% off for $10.79, and English only. Yeah, not visually polished enough or not detailed enough. If you're gonna make a hoverboard / skating game, you need to set it in a city where people actually skate, not in the middle of nowhere.
They grow up so fast. Hey, lights out.
Try one.
Barely made that in time. And it's Hub VR board and requires VR. By the way, that's the title. Let's make that clear enough. Discover spells, what I really need to do.
Reporting for duty.
Give a minion 5+5 or summon 5 wisps. Start by discovering a spell. Interesting. Let's see how this works. Okay, so we need this, and I don't want to get too many crystals here. Then we need this, 8 of 8, and then
Time waits for no one.
come on.
Pure compost.
Let's do this. This, and then do this,
Job done.
and in return. I don't think that worked too badly. Then I could give this taunt if I wanted to, or I could give it 5+5 taunt and then resummon it, either one. Next, we have a game on Steam called Tinker Quarry, which looks like a RPG Maker style game, but not even using RPG Maker, just a very low effort RPG. $4.99, English only, third party EULA. Yep. Again, not making it to the fall list. In fact, we may say that for every game we look at today. But I am a little bit beside myself. I just don't really know what to do on a Monday like this. Because, well, there's several different options. 5+5 taunt. And this. And then victory.
For the wire.
Yeah, I need to play 10 more druid cards, win one more tavern brawl, and then something else. Well, I'm making quicker progress than I thought I should. So we have a game on Steam called Cube, which looks like it's a Flappy Bird clone, just with cubes and the colors change, but there seems to be no reason that the colors change. $1.19 discounted, English only. Yeah, again, not interesting. Tomorrow, if the new single player experience happens on Hearthstone, which probably will, I'm not gonna have probably a lot to say, so it might be a quieter stream. We might try to spice some things up and do some card pack openings, but I think I'll probably just keep it short and sweet tomorrow too. The more progress I can make just making pre-recorded footage, the better. There's still plenty of catch-up I'd love to do, and I'd like to be a lot further ahead than I am as far as pre-recorded footage. So yeah, if I can get any free time just to take as a break and not wear out my voice, if nothing else, that's fine by me. Okay. Lifesteal Rush. If I play this and then play this, I wonder what I get. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Churchgoers. It says it's a turn-based RPG. It kind of looks a little bit like it's trying to be that game that was super popular for that brief amount of time. But I've forgotten the name of that game. But yeah, this also looks super low effort. Discounted to $8.99 English and Norwegian. Let me see if I can find the game I'm thinking about. Undertale, that's the name of the game I'm thinking about. Yeah. This looks like this is an Undertale attempt at a clone. Again, dangerous to call your game Churchgoers, to say the least, because it may be that you're trying to attack people, or it may be that you're not trying to attack people.
Time waits for no one.
And a lot of people probably won't play your game to find out. They'll just make assumptions. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Pixel Sentry. This is almost undoubtedly a low effort asteroids game. Yep. $4.99, laughably expensive. English, alleged full audio, allegedly ESRB rated. Yeah, I doubt a lot of the veracity of these claims. Let's see, Wind Fury. That's the first one you always want. And then +1/+1.
Time's up.
And
Let's
then
do
that.
this.
And then end the turn.
Mushroom power.
Next we have Dark City Vienna's Collector's Edition. This is from Big Fish Games, so we know it's a hidden object game. Honestly, I feel like compared to Cradle, playing one of these hidden object games would have been much more entertaining and varied in the gameplay and better, possibly even in the story, because while the story was intriguing in Cradle, it was also unfinished and just weird without it actually going anywhere. $12.59, so a little bit cheaper than I think your average Big Fish Games Collector's Edition that comes out, but only by maybe 50 cents. They seem to experiment with the prices on their near weekly releases of games, but they still are definitely flooding the Steam marketplace very slowly with content from their own website. I'd be interested in seeing what the the fan base is of bigfishgames.com. Whether there's a considerable amount of people on that website, or if it's like in the thousands or high hundreds or even lower. Next we have a game on Steam called Oda, which seems to be a shoot a gun and it teleports you there around the screens type game. It seems to be a little bit of a frustration awkward game though. Notice how the gameplay that's being shown here seems to be highlighting the idea that you're gonna die a lot, and then there's only 30 levels in it. It's early access for $3.49 discounted. It's English and Russian. I think this is probably leaning closer to a low effort Russian game than a finalized product, or a product that ever would be finalized. When you're advertising yourself as having only 30 levels, it's not a high amount.
Warriors of the frozen wastes, rise.
Let's see. So yeah, that's not going on the fall list. It would be interesting here. Will this potentially be the first day in which nothing goes on the fall list? That would be saying something. That really would put this at the official point where we are at the end of the year as far as video games are concerned.
Job done.
Moving on, next game we have on Steam is called Super Bored Dragon Eyes, which sounds like this is a crazy Chinese game translated into English, and it definitely looks like it's an asset flip game with just a bunch of random assets. $1.99, English only. Yeah, I have no idea here. Maybe this is just a troll that made this game with a joke or ridiculous name. But yeah, there's nothing here of interest.
I wonder. This is not your home.
Next we have a game on Steam called Hard Times. It's a low effort top-down twin stick shooter game. It seems like all the real game publishers at least got smart enough to not release a game around the release of Borderlands 3. That certainly would make some sense. This is early access for $6.99, laughably expensive, English and Italian. We don't get a ton of low effort Italian games. Not enough that I've had to coin that as a phrase to use it, at least not yet. Eventually I guess we'll get down to all kinds of low effort games from all the countries in the world, and maybe then it would become less of a descriptive moniker, where I think right now it still is kind of descriptive to say, yes, this is a low effort Russian game, because there's so many low effort Russian games that get released on Steam. Next we have a game on Steam called War Mode, which looks like an asset flip first person shooter, Counter-Strike Go clone. Doesn't look terrible, but you can see with a large player base it's getting mixed reviews. It's free to play with multiplayer only English Russian games, a lot of in-app purchase items you can buy, or items you can buy maybe not in-app but on the store page. That is another element that I think could easily be removed from Steam very well, is if they got rid of the items that could be purchased, and in particular Counter-Strike Go knife skins. Yeah, it's gonna be a really surprise shock to Steam and Valve in particular when the day comes that they can no longer reliably make money on Counter-Strike Go skins and have to either have had a plan in place in the 4 previous years to have some game to sell to make some money, or they're gonna have to just tighten their belts extremely down to the point where it's just a small group of people maintaining Steam and nothing else. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Tokyo Chronos developer My Dearest announces Project Megalith. No platforms or details really released. There's just a poster here. This is from the Tokyo Game Show. It's the latest in the Chronos series, due out in 2020, and I'm not 100% sure what the Chronos series is. Alright, I could have done that. And I could do that. And which one's a beast? And I can do that. Gamatsu has an article here. Sword Art Online Alicization. Lycos. They've got more videos for that game. Honestly, I feel like this most recent series of Sword Art Online Alicization was probably the worst going, by far, going through a pretty long list of mediocre seasons as far as Sword Art Online works. Yeah, but I guess it doesn't matter. There will just always be something like that, that catches people's attention. Let's see. Also, they had a opening movie for Sword Art Online Alicization Rising Steel, which is a smartphone game. So yeah, Bandai Namco's just gonna spend the money to keep on publishing things. Now I'm just swearing off showing any Japanese trailers anymore. There's been a list, a long list of Bandai Namco, I think in particular, putting out copyright claims on their trailers illegally, because you can't copyright a trailer, at least not in the United States, which is where the law applies. Yeah, I just skipped through the trailer. It's kind of nothing. It's kind of just a teaser.
For no one.
Let's see. I guess, really, when you get down to it, it makes sense that you would always want a kind of cheap, we already know what we're going to do fantasy story. The CW, I think, pretty consistently has some TV show that is a cheap fantasy story. Sci-Fi Channel often, well, sci-fi goes more science fiction than fantasy, but I wouldn't be surprised if MTV or E had a cheap fantasy story show that they did. And if you're gonna write books, doing a cheap fantasy story is pretty easy also. So because you have all of that still kind of happening, it does make sense that there will also, in the Japanese realm of anime, be some kind of cheap fantasy story that's easy
For the wild.
to continuously put a set amount of money in it and get a set return on it. And that's what Dot Hack really was, other than the fact that Dot Hack was over they flooded the market with too much Dot Hack, and Bandai is doing only a little bit less as far as releasing products based around Sword Art Online. Whereas I think a bunch of other anime companies, they'll do their isekai. I Got Reincarnated as a Slime is a good example of that, where they'll do their show, but then they won't try and have 20 different video games released also. There probably is some smartphone game around the I Was Reincarnated as a Slime game, but not console ports and such. It feels like Bandai Namco in particular is just such a huge Japanese company that they feel that they have to do it to maintain face, that they have to make a bunch of video games and they have to be on their own intellectual properties based on Bandai Namco's animation division. This is the equivalent of what Disney isn't doing, and probably rightfully so, where Disney gave up any efforts to try and have a that'll work. Yeah, Disney gave up any interest in having a video game developing division, and instead it's just licensing out appropriate intellectual property from the Disney series into a few appropriate games, where instead of saying, hey, let's have let's have 5 games based on Frozen, and 5 games based on Rapunzel, and 5 games based on Song of the South, or Mary Poppins. Like, Disney owns so many IPs, they could have a new game coming out every week of the year for several years if they wanted to do that, but they don't want to flood the market, and they're kind of smart about that. That they manipulate the scarcity or the false scarcity of their products pretty well. That being said, there is a pretty high number of terrible Disney games from the past out there. Next we have a game on Steam just called Tower Defense Defender of the Kingdom. It's a tower defense game, what can you say? It looks kind of like a mobile game. It's alright looking. It looks a lot better than a significant portion of tower defense games, but it's a tower defense game. Nobody really wants to play these as far as I care or am concerned. I've never heard anybody actually come to the defense of tower defense. This is $2.69 discounted, English and Russian. Again, it's probably really easy to make tower defense games, and that's why they're put out on sale. And that certainly is, seeing so many tower defense games in one lifetime on Steam, it really does get to a point where it feels like there should be just some reckoning where Valve comes in and says, this game is not making any sales, let's just remove it from our storefront. Let's curate our storefront a little bit and get down to the top the top 1,000 games that really matter. But I think part of the problem is storage is effectively free for a company like Valve, so having 1,000 more small indie games, low effort games, probably doesn't even fill one 4 terabyte hard drive worth of space, and redundancy again effectively free, so they probably don't care until until they start running into a problem where their website just cannot handle any more game IDs, which might happen at some point. Moving on, Gametsu has an article, the Final Fantasy VII Remake Sony stage gameplay. I heard that this will have the option to play in turn-based combat if you want, instead of full live action, full action, real-time action combat. This is a 46-minute interview presentation. So clearly the Sony PlayStation presentation at Tokyo Game Show shows that Sony of Japan, the parent company, still kind of cares enough, although I guess this is Square Enix showing its own thing, so this might just have been a Square Enix event, but it is definitely being branded as PlayStation Japan's YouTube channel. And that's where the video is coming from. Final Fantasy VII Remake is due out for the PS4 March 3rd, 2020. By the way, let's see. What do we want to do?
Time waits for no one.
Give a minion +4 attack on that. Do that. And then do that.
For the wild.
Do that. And then do that. And then do that. Barely made that in time. Square Enix is still, in my opinion, in a weird place, because if the next couple of Final Fantasy Remake releases don't go very well, I don't think Square Enix has anything in its back burner or on its plate to replace them. And honestly, I'm not sure if Square Enix has anything in development for its long-term future release lineup. I kind of wouldn't be surprised if they just close up shop after the Final Fantasy re-releases and then say, hey, we're gonna slow down and we're gonna work on Final Fantasy whatever the next one is, which I think it would be 16, and that's it, and we're just gonna lay off all of the subsidiaries and other companies and scale down. It could be by the time that the Final Fantasy comes out, we might be deep into a recession or just starting a recession worldwide, so that would be a good excuse. And if we do hit a recession worldwide, that will affect certainly all games, like all video games, period.
Blood and plunder.
Let's see. Might as well play this. Attack here. Attack here. Attack here.
For the wild. Job done.
Let's see. Next, Gametsu has an article for the PS4, and I don't know what top is. What would that be? I don't know. Like, I have no idea. Oh, this is probably just the top story. Grand Blue Fantasy, one of the Grand Blue games, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, adds Metria. Grand Blue is not the game I think I'm thinking about, though. Stage gameplay. Let's see what this is. Grand Blue Fantasy is a fighting game. Okay. Good to know. I was confusing it with Azur Lane. I think I'm getting a steady stream of announcements for more characters for Azure Lane so much that I'm confusing it with fighting games where it would definitely make a lot of sense that it would make a lot of sense that fighting games would announce new characters. Alright, with that, we're close enough here where we can just move over to the Asian account, and I don't feel like breaking up an episode here because we're moving so fast here. Moving on, Gamatsu for the PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Monster Hunter World Iceborne expansion's second major title update launches in December, which I don't know if that's Iceborne, the expansion is coming up in December, or if this is the second expansion coming out for Iceborne in particular. This looks like a Horizon Zero Dawn collab. Yeah, Monster Hunter is definitely putting out expansions and DLCs on a regular basis to keep people enthralled in it, kind of like Destiny Child does, where like every couple weeks there's either a world boss or a Ragna boss, which right now there's a Ragna boss around a Halloween theme, I imagine is the best way to describe it. Alright, let's re-roll this and then play Paladin, and we should be not too bad. TechRaptor has an article. The saga continues. Romancing Saga 3 and Scarlet Grace are coming in winter. Them being a JRPG series that completely flew me by until a couple years ago. But it's a Square Enix joint. I'll skip through this trailer and see if there's anything amazing. It's kind of ridiculous for Square Enix to be pushing the Scarlet Grace series when they already have the Final Fantasy series. I guess perhaps what happened at some point in development is they said, well, you can't make an 8-bit looking Final Fantasy. That's not what Final Fantasy is anymore. Final Fantasy has to be the top tier, hyper realistic, super long, super graphical games. So then they're effectively making Final Fantasy games under a different name. Let's see. Let's keep on moving on with the news. I'm gonna be done with the daily quest before I'm done with the news at this rate. TechRaptor has an article. Spilt Milk Studios announces a new internal label for experimental games. I guess it's they shut down their sci-fi roguelike MMO Lazarus, but now they announced something different. They're gonna put everything on itch.io. Alright, well, I have no idea who Spilt Milk Games is. I don't think have made anything that I would recognize. So let me just jump through this trailer. The entire trailer is just showing the one game Peck and Run, which doesn't look particularly interesting. In a funny way, I guess both Echo and Cradle feel like experimental games that both failed miserably, but personally I don't believe in selling experiments that don't succeed. Like, and probably not selling experiments in the first place. If you're going to look at it as a scientific experiment in the real world, you would do the experiment. If you got positive results, you would repeat the experiment multiple times. You'd get peer review to get other people to repeat the experiment. You would try to refine the experiment, and it would be a long process in which an experiment would then be converted into a finalized procedure. You don't just... Yeah, what you don't do is you have an experiment succeed and then you immediately stop doing any more research or polishing on that experiment and just sell that as a final product, unless it's just like such an astounding success. So yeah, if Echo was doing an experiment, and almost certainly it was, in its gameplay mechanic, it didn't work. At some point, a game producer needed to say, hey, this isn't fun. We need to, at the very least, put in a casual mode where you can just walk around and you can't die. An invincibility mode. That's really what Echo needs, is if you had a mod that would just have that happen, instead of allowing you to die. By the way, Echo has QuickTime events when you're about to die, but you can only succeed at the QuickTime events if 2 enemies or fewer are around you. If more than 2 enemies are around you, you will instant die. Or will not instantly die. You still have to press the button in QuickTime event if you want to try, but you won't succeed. At least I never did. Cradle, in a lot of ways, feels like an experimental story that needed a lot more polishing, but also felt like it was an experiment in making a hidden object game with 3D objects and making what would be effectively something like what remains of Edith Finch style walking simulator, which frankly all the good walking simulators, quote unquote, aren't actually walking simulators so much as because they do have puzzles in them and they do have interactivity in them. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Mass MASS Builder. This looks like a Gundam clone and it doesn't look terrible. You do have this odd anime character come out of nowhere, but every other screenshot really seems like you're just doing that. Oh no, there's another anime character talking to you. Wow, I'm gonna get win streaks at this rate. This is early access, $22.49, English only. It might be a problem being English only. The achievement seems to be just a solid gray block, unless that image isn't loading. I'm gonna put this on the follow list though. It's rated very positively, and it is single player, so this might be the Mobile Suit Gundam game that you can actually play and not feel terrible for purchasing, which would be saying something considering how every official Mobile Suit Gundam game seems to be a terrible game for one reason or the other. But hey, look at that. We actually found one game that made it to the follow list. Next we have a game called Airy, A-E-R-Y. This is another you play as a bird and fly around game. Every time I've played one of these, they've turned out to be terrible. That being said, I guess I'll put it on the follow list and see what the reviews say. It's a little low polygon, but it looks like it's an effort here to be artistic and not just asset flippy. And looks like you fly around and collect feathers, which is not a terrible idea for a game. So yeah, $5.59 discounted to English full audio. Yep, that goes on the follow list. I will have to, at some point here, determine. Yeah, I've probably said this several times, but as I'm thinking about the end of the year and next year, January, February probably would be a good time to do another follow list cleanup when times are slow and there's nothing going on. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Chronophobia, which would be, I guess, a fear
What shall we
of
hunt?
time. But, well, all I'm seeing is some dark screenshot syndrome in the background and some ugly neon lights in the foreground. This looks like it's a first-person shooter according to the tags. Yep, this looks like an asset flip first-person shooter game. $6.99, no discount, English alleged full audio. Getting compared to the master levels of Doom and Dead Space 2. I don't know where it gets that comparison from.
Reporting for duty.
Gamatsu has an article for the PS4. Castle Crashers remastered launches for the PS4 on September 17th. Due out day and date of the Switch version. So my question is the PC version getting a free remaster? Oh, it's already out there, so I probably need to do some research there and see if I own any of the Castle Crashers games, whether the remastered or the original version. By the way, Dirt Rally was available for free. They were just giving it away for free, so I grabbed that game. For better or worse, I don't think Dirt Rally was one of the better dirt games in the reviews.
Access denied.
That's not a valid target.
Okay. Let's go ahead and kill this first.
Must move quickly.
In fact, one of my friends on Steam even mentioned it to me. I had seen it on slickdeals.net, but I had not moved very fast to get it, so I very possibly would have forgotten about it. So thanks to that person who reminded me. And in all honesty, if that's the best way you can support my channel, is just to say, hey, this game is free right now on Steam, that's slightly helpful right now. It might get annoying if I ever got to a point where hundreds of people were sending me that same message, but right now that's certainly not the case. So yeah, the problem there is, unfortunately, it's a rare occurrence that a game that I actually have on my wish list, and that's a big part of this, would be it actually needs to be a game on my wish list. It's a rare occasion when those kinds of games are actually on sale or free. And sale, like if something's on sale, I'm not gonna really buy it just because it's on sale. Not until there's a big Steam summer sale or something. Then I might buy it. TechRaptor has an article. Abbey Games renowned explorers giveaway, so they were giving away this game. It's probably too little too late now to enter it, but and yeah, I don't really want to get games from free directly from the developers of games, because that adds an awkward level of weirdness to covering a game. On the other hand, if somebody were to win a game for free directly from the publisher and then they gave me the code,
Can't win them all.
I wouldn't really know about that, so I don't think that would affect my opinion too much. But I still would want to disclose it, that hey, somebody gave me this game for free. And that's usually how I have it labeled right now, is that I just have a category of games I got for free. I don't really know how I got those games for free, whether it was a Steam free giveaway or a website giveaway. We really haven't been seeing anything like that in the past 6 months, I would say. Either it used to be rather frequent that Humble Bundle would give away keys or Indie Gala would give away keys. I'm not seeing so much of that. That might be because I curated my Twitter feed a little bit more to get away from that stuff, because I was spending too much time dealing and looking for free keys. Often people would put out Steam keys directly onto the Twitterverse, and then those Steam keys would be immediately grabbed by a bot or something. So I was wasting a lot of time around that. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Dauntless is leaving early access on September 26th and getting a new season. Dauntless, I believe, is an MMO. Yeah. Is it a hero game or like a hero versus hero type game, I guess? I don't think there's a lot to say about Dauntless, though. It's not Fortnite, and I don't even know Fortnite is the big game anymore, but as far as I care, Fortnite's the last big one to have a big impact. We are probably lining up to have a new game come out in the Christmas season this year. Something probably needs to happen, or Fortnite needs to get some more content or something.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
And then the turn. I just wanted to point out Twitch support 17 hours ago. We're recovering from earlier issues preventing streamers from going live and with thumbnails. Thank you for your patience. I guess at least they're combining two problems here. But it, like 18 hours ago it happened. They 17 hours ago they fixed it, or they're recovering from it. So yeah, Twitch still doing a lot better than the Epic Game Store, but still their Twitch support page highlights that little hiccups seem to happen. Let's see. Let's play this and then hit this. Next, Gamatsu has an article for the PC, PS4, Top, and Xbox One. What is Top? Something online platform? It's not Switch. Anyways, Tales of Arise has a trailer in the Tales series, I would guess this game is. Or maybe a new game. Let's see. I want to scroll down here and see what platforms. It says Tales of Arise is due out for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC in 2020.
I wonder.
So, top must just mean that this is a top story. Again, this is a Bandai Namco story, so I'm not gonna watch the trailer. It's a 59-second video.
Protocol 7.
They're talking about astral energy. There's some 3D model characters, and he just grabbed the sword out of her chest and it burned his hand.
Move quickly.
Let's see. And then it seems like it's a high action-paced hack and slasher game. High-speed action-paced game. Looks interesting enough. What I think is most interesting about the animation style in this Tales of Arise is that it seems like they've made a specific effort to not embrace the moe animation style at all, and these characters are taking on the appearance of a 90s style anime character who looks more human in their height and older in general. So this might be a case of Bandai Namco's internal ethics department, if they have one, saying, hey, let's make this more appealing to the Westerners. Let's make the characters look more humanoid and regular in age and get away from the moe art style. It might be a case that the moe art style in itself is finally, it's been a long time. If it is finally starting to fall out of favor amongst Japanese audiences, I would be rather surprised, but that would be interesting too. It's time to move on. Time to evolve the art style. Next, we have an article for Tales of Crystallia, the ins and outs of battle gameplay for the smartphone. Now, see, this is a smartphone JRPG, and this looks really nice for a smartphone JRPG. I've seen a lot of bad RPGs in general, so the idea that you could put it on a phone and it looks like you can maybe tap to control different characters, and each of the characters have 4 abilities, and that lines up with where your buttons are. Maybe the other characters will auto attack, so there's a minimal amount of button mashing you actually need to play. Again, I don't want to show this trailer, but I want to watch this because, like, my concerns in particular around can you ever make a good game on mobile phones might be addressed in part here, if not completely. Right. And
For justice.
Attack. Yes, this feels like this isn't turn-based, and the actions are do have cooldowns on them, which seems reasonable. So I'm not sure if it switches you between each of the characters and then asks you to pick, or if it's turn-based and it just looks like it's not turn-based because of the way they film the footage. But it doesn't look terrible. Tales of Crystallia. That being said, it may have a very limited number of enemies and very limited story, and may just be a lot of grinding. So, you know, let's keep on playing. Next, we have an article from Gamatsu. Azure Lane Crosswave DLC character Touhou announced. I knew there was an article like this. So another anime girl who is the human anthropomorphization of a famous battleship. This time the Taiho, which is probably like a Chinese or Japanese ship if I was to guess. Azure Lane Crosswave is coming still exclusively to PS4. It's out for the PS4 right now. I'm not even certain. Odd that it's a PS4 exclusive, but I think we will probably go through a couple of generations of that still being the case, where a few Japanese companies will just stick with PS4 until they can no longer stick with it and make money. On the other hand, an argument could be made that with Microsoft embracing microtransactions in Sea of Thieves and how they wanted to have always online DRM on the Xbox One, maybe they didn't really learn their lesson, and maybe the next Microsoft console will have always online DRM, and maybe Microsoft in general will just run its name through the mud more than they kind of already have. Like they certainly aren't releasing a ton of great games, so yeah, I could still see Microsoft not really retaking the lead in the next generation, and PlayStation maintaining or growing a lead because of it. But both companies seem like they've made some major mistakes this generation, and we'll just see what happens, if anything happens, when the new consoles come out. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Death Smiles 1 and 2 is coming to additional platforms. Death Smiles being shoot 'em up games. Let's see, do we know what platforms? No, not really, so wouldn't be surprised if it comes to like the Stadia, the Switch, things like that.
Protocol 7.
I definitely recall the name Death Smiles just because of the name. I don't think I particularly recall the game or think it's that interesting. Speaking of interesting, I've watched a YouTube video talking about the rise and fall of G4, which, geez, it's probably been not 17 years, but maybe 7 years since G4 completely got shut down. I miss X-Play, certainly. I miss Adam Sessler. I think if he was reviewing games just as a hobby, it would be great. I miss Morgan Webb. As of the time of the YouTube video, it said that Morgan Webb was working for Activision Blizzard. I don't believe she actually is anymore. If she was, she's certainly not doing anything to help Activision Blizzard's profile, and that was the job that I think she had for a brief time. But on the other hand, yeah, I get it. They're old. They would be incredibly old to come back. And you can't live in the past, unfortunately. But yeah, a new on TV type show like X-Play maybe would work, but maybe not. With Twitch and YouTube existing, I don't think you really need something like that. If anything, it might just be happy that they got out before Gamergate happened, because I wouldn't be surprised if they had some terrible take on that and ruined my love for X-Play.
Last warning.
Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate for the PS4 Switch launches December 19th in Japan. Adds Hades and Achilles. Apparently it's also coming out for the Xbox One and PC. I don't think I'm ever actually going to play a Warriors game at this rate. It seems like they're all just so button mashy, and yeah, this game will launch for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC in North America. PC version will also be released in Japan at that time in February of 2020. Yeah, I don't think that the Warriors games are ever gonna succeed in catching my attention. Alright. Yeah, this does.
Reporting for duty. Move quickly.
I still don't see the end of the line as far as news, so I probably need to. If I get all the daily quests done, I think I'll probably just go through all the news directly. Gametsu has an article, Fairy Tail details, character trailer, and screenshots. Fairy Tail being an anime that's coming in a video game form for the PC, PS4, and Switch. I don't know what a Fairy Tail series breaks down as a game. Is this going to be a RPG? It looks kind of like it. RPG, not a fighting game. Because if it was a fighting game, it wouldn't need so many backgrounds.
Unity, precision, perfection.
There's a trailer that I'll look at. It's also worth mentioning here you have a particularly young looking character, so we'll see if there's any kind of shenanigans that happen around this character, whether she plays a significant role or not. Or maybe it'll be fun on PC if it comes to Steam because she's wearing not a school outfit, so that's all they care about. Or at least that seems like all Steam cares about, or sometimes it seems like that's all that Steam cares about. Let's see, I'm just gonna go and play this and then return. So the young character does magic attacks in this RPG, and the bussier blonde does some kind of almost like dancing magic attack. They all kind of do magic attacks, and the attacks seem actually rather slow, so I imagine that's not, you won't see their full attack animation every time you play the game, or every time you use it. I'd have to do more research to figure out what I would really have to figure out what the Fairy Tail anime is about first. At some point there was a super long trailer, by the way, of Death Stranding. I didn't watch it. I don't really care enough about it to go down that route. If Death Stranding came to PC, I'm fully open to playing it, but I don't think I need to get super hyped about it either. Moving on, Gametsu has an article for the PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Code Vein stage gameplay. Again, Code Vein, perhaps the only game that actually is coming out this year that interests me. At least that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Skipping through the stage gameplay, it's mostly just, you know, Japanese people describing the game they're working on, or presenters describing the game. There's really no footage at all, or extremely small amounts of footage. It's like, oh, there's gameplay between minute 40 and minute 43. There's gameplay between minute 50 and 53, and there's gameplay between minute 55 and 58. So less than 10 minutes of gameplay and at least 58 minutes of footage. Not really worth anybody's time if they were watching it live, and not really even worth your time if you're skipping around and have the timestamps. Gamatsu has an article for the Switch. Hatsune Miku Project Diva Megamix adds the songs Hibana and Ohido Julia Night. I guess you would kind of have to know what those songs are for that to really make any sense.
Your soul shall be mine.
I assume those are Hatsune Miku songs. I'm not even sure how many songs, singles, or soundtracks Hatsune Miku has released as a virtual pop idol. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Rebel Galaxy Outlaw releases a new development roadmap, which might be an indication that they're trying to get back on track. I think I'm not sure Rebel Galaxy Outlaw is the game I'm thinking about either. Well, it's currently available on PC with a PS4 and Switch version on the way. The Steam version is still on track to release August 13th, 2020, once the 1 year exclusivity with Epic ends. So right now, Rebel Galaxy Outlaw is just an Epic exclusive, and I don't think anybody's giving it any attention. And inherently, this is going to be the dark back end to being an Epic Store exclusive. Is there's going to be a considerable amount of games that don't get as many sales as they probably could have, and they come out of exclusivity 6 months or a year later, and nobody cares about them because they're old hat, and something better has come along by that point.
Converting stored energy. Converting stored energy.
And attack. TechRaptor has an article here. The Nintendo-themed land opening in Universal Studios Japan next spring. So, Super Nintendo World. Last I heard, it was being developed and designed. We hadn't really gotten a lot of information or description around it. I'm guessing. I didn't know it was a Universal Studios thing. That's the one part that really gets me, is because I thought it was going to be its own, like, Nintendo Park specifically, but maybe even Nintendo thought to themselves that's not going to really work. Looking at this trailer, it's just all animated that's being shown to me with a lot of Mario stuff. It really does look like it's just a 100% Mario focus section, not going with any Zelda stuff or Metroid stuff or anything else besides the Mario section. No Pokemon stuff. Yeah, the article says Super Nintendo World will open with 2 rides for its first phase. One is an adaptation of Super Mario Kart, the other is Yoshi's Island. So, yeah, it's almost like it's just a small section of Universal Studios. Or what Universal Studios often does for Halloween, where they just change it for a very temporary amount of time. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a blog here. NetEase drives mobile games business in Japan while Tencent builds a presence in the emerging markets. I believe one of the Tencent in part or completely owned companies is removing like all clans that mention Hong Kong from their game. Which, okay, those Hong Kong protests I still believe are going on, although people have kind of forgotten about it and don't care, it seems. I don't know what you could really do about that. If the people of Hong Kong are demanding democracy, either you have many countries come in and say, no, we're going to blockade Hong Kong and protect it from mainland China, and we're going to liberate it, and start potentially World War III in the process, or you just turn a blind eye because, yeah, and this is what China knows it can probably get away with, is China can just do another Tiananmen Square style quelling of an uprising.
Mind if I roll need?
Moving on. For the Switch, Mario and the Sonic at the Olympics has a trailer. Is this one of the Donkey Kong Country bad guys, I guess? Looks like they're skating on some kind of hoverboards or something. This game is going to have Dream Shooting, Dream Karate, Dream Racing. Apparently with a bunch of other events that... am I showing the screen right now? Let's just... what's funny is Mario and Sonic at the Olympics is made by Sega. So,
Let me think.
let's see. 10 classic 2D events plus new playable 3D events. 10 events here. And 21 3D events here. So it's going to be a whole combination of things, little mini games. Probably not super interesting mini games though. Let's just go ahead and hit that, I guess. In the turn. Honestly, Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, as I'm looking at it, looks like it definitely has some elements from a previous Sonic game. You're skating and collecting rings, which I guess that also makes sense in an Olympic sense, but it does look like you're just collecting Sonic golden rings. Next from Gamatsu, we have for the PC, PS4, and Switch, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch Remastered launch trailer. It's due out September 20th. I'm excited by that, because then I could actually play this, and this would probably be one of the ones I want to play. Now, honestly, maybe I'd get a little content ID like crazy playing it, but we'll see. It's coming to the PC, it says, but I don't know if that means it's coming to Steam or if it would be coming to something else. Let's see, the non-remastered versions are due out on September 20th. Read more about the title here. Knowing that there is a remastered version now, it would be really frustrating if only the non-remastered version was on Steam. The original version, I think, is coming to the Switch, where everything else is getting remastered. Yes, and it is coming out for Steam. Great. Alright. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. It's a little bit late, certainly, but better late than never. Gamma Sutra has an article here, Plumbing the Depths of Open World Space Survival Sim Emporium's Design. If this article interests you, or this blog interests you. Frankly, this doesn't look like anything other than an advertisement for a pretty ugly looking game. I can see the end of the road now, so if I can just burn through the news, we should be ready to wrap this up. Next we have a game on Steam called Nightcrawl. Sci-fi puzzle game, it says. Well, it seems like it might be a light-based game, or it might be like a text-based game. I'm having a hard time figuring out. Yeah, it seems like you play the entirety of the game looking at that small screen. So they're doing something here where they have a very simplistic game and they're trying to make it look way more graphical than they clearly were ever capable of doing.
Let me think.
Well, this just does not look good, frankly. It's $13.49 discounted, a bunch of languages. Warning, this game is hard. I'm not interested in it then. 16 achievements with numbers. It looks like it might be an achievement game. Yeah, I'm definitely not sold in what I'm seeing.
Move quickly. Access denied.
1 health short. Gamatsu has an article, Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 for the Switch are coming to the West September 27th. That would be interesting, certainly. If you want to get your kid into JRPGs, I think Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 might be a good 3 games to hand to your kids, but they also might be way too grindy and frustrating, and I really don't know if Dragon Quests 1, 2, and 3 are really worth playing at all. It still probably is a lot smarter if your kid has a Switch just to give them the most recent Pokemon game. Which I guess Ash Ketchum actually won a league tournament after potentially 22 years, I think was the number I saw, or 12 years. Right. I wonder if by them having him actually win, that's a justification now to remove Ash Ketchum as the main character in the storyline of the anime. Which probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to keep things interesting. Every other character has changed, or most of them have. So here's the problem right now is we don't want to break the streak. We might as well just continue winning until we have a win. We break our win streak. I'm getting up to rank 17 on my Asian account, which is not super helpful, but nice to say the least. Gamma Sutra has an article here, Outstanding Ideas Ed Log on Asteroids and Gauntlet. Here's a blog talking about Asteroids and Gauntlet for apparently no reason.
I will fight with honor. I will command the light.
I've heard an accusation, and I bet this is probably true, that mainstream video game journalists are out going to these conventions, and since they don't know what's going on, they have these evergreen articles that they can put out at any point. That would explain a blog like this where it has just zero relevancy to what is going on right now, but they're going to put it out anyways to try and get some more clicks. Also, the accusation from the same person is that in the summer they lose views like crazy, and so now they're desperate to try and get as many hate clicks or views in general. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Battle Arena. It looks like it's a player versus player shooter, Smash Brothers style game. Free to play with a bunch of items you can purchase that look very cheaply made. Online multiplayer only, a bunch of languages supported. 24 achievements. Nothing here appeals to me. Certainly I don't think anybody should play a generic game by the name of Battle Arena anyways. Let's think of a better name. A lot of game creators need to think of better names. This was an interesting story. One of the YouTube lawyers I follow actually covered this. The ex-King of Kong, Billy Mitchell, threatens a lawsuit over alleged cheating, and he sued. He sent a demand letter, kind of like a cease and desist, which really has no authority.
Let me think.
It's kind of like the precursor to an actual lawsuit. He sent it to Twin Galaxies and the Guinness Book of World Records. Twin Galaxies partners with Genesis as far as all video game world records and facts. So yeah, he's claiming they defamed him. You could read the full details here. This is a story that will be more interesting if it actually goes to a lawsuit than if it doesn't. If there's just some settlement, which is, I suspect, what Billy Mitchell would be more than happy with, is just getting some money to go away. We'll probably never hear any kind of satisfactory resolution. Gamma Sutra has a listing here. Get a Job, Sucker Punch Productions, Wizards of the Coast, and more are hiring. So, studio managers for Heart Machine, game producer for Astragon Entertainment, lead server software engineer for Wizards of the Coast, systems designer for Cold Iron Studios, and a UI artist for Sucker Punch Productions are all listed here in this article that really just combines about 5 other job listings. Well, there goes my win streak. So I guess we get back on that horse. Might as well keep on playing. Gamma Sutra has an article. Sea of Thieves adds microtransaction store in the latest update, which is ridiculous, certainly.
I will fight with honor.
But I guess they're trying to make back money that they spent developing Sea of Thieves, which clearly they spent too much money developing Sea of Thieves, or not enough money developing Sea of Thieves. Take your pick. I think the concept is kind of flawed. Here we have a game on Steam that is just a bunch of Asian characters. Looks like it's barely just a launcher to some kind of emulator running a mobile game. It's free to play. English is not supported. It's tagged as an MMO with in-app purchases, and it's Chinese only. And yeah, it's not being presented well, to say the least. And clearly it is just a mobile game that's been ported to a web browser app, it seems. Gamma Sutra has an article. IGF 2020 Inspiration, the grand prize winner was Return of Obra Dinn. I think it does design. It does deserve some awards. Return of Obra Dinn. I'm not sure if IGF is just another. Yeah, it's just another Gamma Sutra GDC sister companies under the parent company of Informa. So this is Gamma Sutra advertising their own awards, basically, which probably have more credibility than they deserve.
Of course it's the right way.
Next we have a game on Steam called YASG. which looks like it's kind of nothing. Looks like it's a 2D Minecraft clone, Terraria clone. Early access, $19.99, English and Russian.
Let me think.
Nothing here looks intriguing.
Reporting for duty.
Just trying to burn through all of this. Next, we have a game on Steam called Neon Tide. This is probably a low effort game. On the other hand, so the question is, are these asset flips that with really good 3D models of characters, or is there really a game here? Or is this just a like the trailer is just showing us still images. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a low effort asset flip game. Like the only animation I'm seeing is one character moving slightly and one character moving their arm. $12.99. English only. It's tagged as a adventure RPG with sexual content. I'll put it on the follow list. We'll see how this gets received. My suspicion, if I was to guess, is it is not really a game.
Converting stored energy. Job done.
And Neon Tide is in fact just some trickery going on. Would also have to consider its price at $12.99, depending on what kind of game it actually is. But that's what the follow list is for. Next, we have a game on Steam called Invaded, which looks alright in the animation department, but then the screenshots look pretty awful. So, again, probably an asset flip game. Early access discounted, $8.49, English, full audio allegedly. Not making it to the follow list. I can make a decision about that one at least. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Gravitation, and no. Low resolution, very zoomed out, pixel graphics for some kind of platform frustration game. $7.99, laughably expensive, English only. Again, not making it to the follow list. Let's see. Play this. And then play this. And return. Gamatsu has an article for the Switch and PS4. Hino Maruko has a teaser trailer. First look at the Peaky and Tamsoft action game. So what is this?
Of course
trailer.
it's the right way.
2-minute trailer. Let's see what this action game really is. Seeing some military footage in the game, but not actual gameplay. It's not until like the last minute that I see any gameplay, and it looks like it's a ninja girl with some kind of maybe steampunk gauntlet, and she's punching robots, and they've managed to very lovingly show 2 panty shots in this video. So it feels like it's almost like an Onichambra style game, but coming for the PS4 and Switch, and not including any of the Onichambra series characters. Well, I'll be slightly interested in seeing more about that when it comes out. This.
Access denied.
And then attack.
Job's done.
And then return. Do I need to mention every time RetroArch releases a new version? I kind of don't think so. So I'm not going to bother that. Next we have an interesting titled game, Kings and Slaves. Although the logo says Kings ampersand Slaves. This looks like it's maybe a mobile game or an iPad game that's been converted to PC. It looks not terrible as far as an RPG game, although I'm not sure if there's really anything more to it than what we're seeing, which is just fighting and then getting rewards and then fighting more and more. This might be extremely grindy. $4.99, single player, English and Chinese. And yeah, I think the Chinese part is the part that drops this below a level of quality to deserve to be on the fall list. Clearly you have no localization going here, where you would not want to call your game Kings and Slaves. If you could call it anything else, that would be better.
Converting stored
by far. They don't even let hard drives be labeled as masters and slaves anymore, and that was a big part of how you had to set up a hard drive to work in computers. But at some point they changed the definition and disallowed using that phrase. Let's see. Next we have an article from TechRaptor. Baldur's Gate enhanced delayed on consoles along with other Beamdog titles. So apparently Beamdog is having trouble releasing their games on consoles from the look of it, unless it almost feels like that would be a publisher issue more than anything else. And this article might go into details as to why it's delayed, but I'm not going to bother to look up the information. Alright, so let's just go through the last bits of news and then wrap it up. Unless I want to make a beast deck and try to play beasts, I think it really is going to require me to do that. So we can get rid of this and let's make a new beast deck, even if we don't use it. Hunter, 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 there you are. Start there, and then we'll call it beast, and then we'll type in the word beast. That's inefficient. I should have just copied and pasted it. Didn't work. Alright. Can't copy and paste things. Copy. Paste. Hit enter. Alright. Anything that actually is a beast is what I want. What I don't want is something that just interacts with the beast. This and this and this may not have as many cards as I would like. No, I think I'm good. Get like a big ticket guy. Alright. That's not too bad of a deck. Alright, let's cover the news now. TechRaptor has an article, Harvest Moon Mad Dash launching in North America in October. I don't know how much of this is really a farming game though. Yeah, it seems like it's a farming game only in a very brief mentality. Otherwise it seems like it's more of a Tetris game, and mostly it seems centered around player versus player. Alright, so I'm gonna skip the games and we'll just cover the news and then we'll be done. I think this is worth mentioning. Flycast WinCE has merged into Flycast, so it's now only one core for Lib Retro. Plus there's a Switch port teaser. So now Dreamcast games that used Windows CE and Dreamcast that games that didn't use Windows CE both can be run using the core Flycast, which that's the right way for that to go. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article for the PC, PS4, and smartphone. Genshin Impact Japanese voice cast has been announced. Okay, we'll see if this game actually is coming worldwide. It is PS4, PC, iOS, and Android in 2020. I have no idea what Genshin Impact is, and Tokyo Game Show is like the worst week to try to avoid getting content ID claims. So I'm seeing a bunch of anime characters, one feeding a dragon. It looks like it's a fast action JRPG game. Is pretty much all I can take from it. And that's true for pretty much any JRPG game, is that, yeah, you've got some nice animation going on the characters and such, but either you follow their ridiculous storyline that they build up and still not really know anything about the game, or you just kind of ignore it until the game is actually out and then you have a general sense. In all honesty, I don't really have a general sense of how any of the story goes for any of the Final Fantasy games either, so until you play them, you just kind of assume it's the same generic JRPG storyline every time. Gamatsu has an article here for the Switch. Sega Ages Puzzle in Action. Ichidant R launches September 26th in Japan. I'm not sure if that's coming to the West. Maybe, maybe not. And let's see. I think TechRaptor has this article. Dragon Quest 1 through 3 are coming to Nintendo Switch with worse graphics this September. Let's see. These were originally known as Dragon Warrior. Okay, that might explain some things. Let's see. All three re-release titles will keep their controls and mimic the gameplay in order for players to rock it out like the mid to late 80s. What's the deal with the worst graphics though? Well, here's a they're saying in Japan the Switch trilogy is a horrible disservice to the original series in their terms of graphic fidelity. First three games were remade on the Super NES in 16-bit pixel art and looked fantastic and cohesive. The mobile ports are disappointing to me by comparison because they redid the graphics in a way that made the sprites and titles look sloppy, muddy, and ugly. Oh, is that this game? So, Square Enix seems to be just porting their mobile port games to Switch. It's a shame. And kind of more indication that Square Enix is about to wrap up as a video game company, if I was to guess. Let's see. Gamasutra has an article here. The US mobile developer Scopely expands into Asia with a new Japanese office. Okay. Interesting. What does Scopely make? Walking Dead Road to Survival, WWE Champion, Star Trek Fleet Command. Well, those are recognizable names at least. So it'll be interesting to see how well they succeed. TechRaptor has this article. Borderlands 3 save data is reportedly being corrupted even with cloud saves. I wouldn't be surprised, frankly. I wouldn't be surprised of anything I heard about Borderlands 3. Lost 7 hours with no explanation, according to one person. So yeah, that sucks, certainly. I've also heard that Borderlands 3 makes it close to impossible to stream gameplay because it has some kind of like always online DRM it's doing and taking all the upload bandwidth. I've also heard plenty of other things, but still it seems like Borderlands 3 is fine as a game. It really just means it comes down to, do you want to boycott Randy Pitchford or 2K Games or Gearbox or not, or do you just want to play the game? Gamma Sutra has an article here. Borderlands 3 has nearly doubled Borderlands 2 peak concurrent record on PC, so clearly not everybody wants to boycott them if twice as many as the most number of people online are playing Borderlands 3 or have played Borderlands 3 at one point. That being said, Borderlands 2 still was mostly a console game. There's been a big shift from playing Xbox 360 to PC. Also, this is from Randy Pitchford, so this also may just be completely made up. So take it with a grain of salt. A big grain of salt. TechRaptor has an article, Final Fantasy XIV Tokyo Game Show highlights, Blue Mage 2B at New Game Plus, and more. So I don't know if any of that really matters. This all seems like it's just Final Fantasy 15 or 14 content. 14 I think is the online service, isn't it? So they're getting some 2B costumes for the online game, it seems, plus a New Game Plus, it seems, unless I'm wrong. And 14 is the most recent one. I thought it was 15. Well, whatever. More and more feeling like I am not going to ever play any of the Final Fantasy games, and I'm okay with that. TechRaptor has the same article saying Borderlands doubled its peak number of concurrent players. And then Gamma Sutra has an article here. There's a report that the PS4 has sold through 30 million units in the United States. Okay. So take that for what it is, I suppose. And then that brings me to the Humble Bundle. Let's see if there's any new bundles worth mentioning. And then we'll wrap up the stream. Network and Security Certificate 2.0 on the Humble Bundle. So if you want to get the Microsoft certified, what is it? It's MCSA, Microsoft Certified Security Analyst, I would bet. Or if you want to get the CCENT, I haven't heard of that one. What is that? Cisco Certified Network Technician something. Cisco Certified Engineer and Network Technician would be my guess. If you pay more than $8, you can get, here, I'm just going to show these. You can get the A+ complete review guide. The A+ CompTIA A+ certification is the first one you probably should go for. I don't think you should go for the MSSA first, so paying $1 for these is kind of silly. Frankly, having modern versions of all of these books would probably not be a bad idea. You could probably read these same books or similar books like this in the library, but this information changes pretty frequently and the tests change pretty frequently to get the certifications. Although some of these certifications also require you to renew and take the tests over and over again, so you get in this pyramid scheme where you get certifications in the hopes of getting a job. It often doesn't help you get a job, and then you're at the risk of losing the certification if you don't pay quite a bit to take the test again. If you passed A+, then you would go for Security Plus and Network Plus. And then if you pay 15 more, the CCNA, which is the Cisco Certified Network Associates, I believe, test, which is rather hard, or last time I looked it was very hard, because it's all about Cisco and how Cisco wants you to do things, whether it's the right way or actually industry standard or helpful or informative information at all. Frankly, you basically have to be working in a server farm for a couple of years before you have a decent chance of getting a CCNA passing that test. I don't know how much an AWS Amazon Warehouse certificate is worth. It's probably a certificate that is gaining value slowly, to say the least. OCP, interesting. And OCA. I don't know what this is. It's probably something certified programmer. Oracle certified programmer and Oracle certified associate. I'm not sure you really need those unless you're going to be a Java programmer or work on Oracle software. And then Cyber SA, CYSA, CompTIA. Yeah, all these certificates are legitimate certificates, though, from what I know. These are certificates you would want to get if you want to work in the IT field, particularly if you have a job in the IT field and they want you to get these certificates and will give you a raise or pay for you to take the test. That's frankly the best way to do it. If you're trying to get into the field, do the A+, at least, if you can afford it, but honestly, none of them are gonna help the fact that there's probably not as many IT jobs as you think. The RPG games bundle it has 7 days remaining, and we've already covered that game, that bundle. Cat Quest, if you pay over the average of $4.58, is about the only game that interests me. Level up your Python bundle. Yeah, if you're going to get into programming, I'd go into learning Python first before getting certifications. There's a big difference between being a programmer and being an IT guy and fixing problems and setting up servers and such. The Red Sonja bundle only has about an hour left, so it doesn't look like there's any new game bundles. Alright. And I don't think I really need to scroll down my Twitter feed, because we'll almost certainly be back tomorrow doing this Tombs of Terror single player experience. So that can just be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.